Yeah, so far we have covered section 10, 11, that is the stay of the suit and res judicata, isn't it? Now, before I proceed to section 12 and 13, and small clarification I would like to make as regard the judgment of the Supreme Court in Indian Bank versus Marketing Federation, Maharashtra State Cooperative Federation, that is AIR 1998 Supreme Court, page number 1952. Now, in this judgment, the what I had given you was the finding of the appellate court, that the Bombay High Court appellate court, that provisions of section 10 can also be invoked to summary suit. Now, that judgment has been set aside by the Supreme Court, because the facts of the case are this way. Now, the suit was filed by the Maharashtra Cooperative State Marketing Federation against the bank, Indian Bank, for claiming a sum of rupees 4 crores. That suit was filed in the original side of the Bombay High Court under 12, clause 12 of the latest patent. It was a summary suit under Order 37, Rule 1 and 2. The bank later on also filed a suit, for recovery of money. The suit filed by the society was a regular suit for claiming a sum of rupees 4 crore. Then as a counterblast, the Indian bank filed a suit for recovery of their amount under the letter of credit, claiming more than about 6 crore rupees. Now, before the single judge, the federation took up the plea that year. Their suit being first in time, section 10 is attracted, and hence the suit filed by the Indian bank should be stayed. The learned judge took the view that here the provisions of Order 37, Rule 1-2 cannot be brought within the purview of section 10 because actually trial doesn't take place under Order 37, Rule 1 and 2. So the application taken out under section 10 was rejected. Then the matter was carried in letters patent appeal under clause 15 of the letters patent in the Bombay High Court Division Bench by the Indian Bank. The appellate bench of the Bombay High Court set aside the judgment of the single judge and took the view that the expression trial has to be given a widest interpretation. As I mentioned to you, the moment a plaint is filed in the court of law, presentation of a filing of the plaint assumes the character of a starting trial. So the judgment and order passed by the single judge was set aside, holding that here the provisions of Order 37, provisions of section 10 are applicable to a suit under Order 37, Rule 1 and 2. So thereafter, the other side came in appeal to the Supreme Court under Article 136 special leave petition. The judgment of the Supreme Court has been given by Justice G.N. Nanavati, the bench of Justice S.C. Agrawal. They set aside the judgment of the Bombay High Court, holding that under Order 37, Rule 1 and 2, actually they comment that though the general trial doesn't take place, trial can be said to be assumed when the court grants leave to the defendant to file written statement and not before that, and not the just filing of the plaint. So the provisions of section 10 are not applicable, that is what held. So the earlier Bombay High Court has relied upon a judgment of the Supreme Court under the Representation of People's Act. That judgment you may see that here, that is Harishchandra versus Trilok Singh case, AIR 1957 Supreme Court, page number 444. Harishchandra versus Trilok Singh case. This was a case under the Representation of People's Act. It was held by the Supreme Court for petitions under the Representation of People's Act, section 10 is not applicable. On that basis, the Bombay High Court had taken the view. The Supreme Court took the view that this is not applicable. Okay, so please note that for summary proceedings under Order 37, Rule and 2, which is a summary in nature, because if you stay the proceeding, if you compare them as a general trial, the very object of expeditious remedy will be defeated. Okay, this is what I wanted to clarify. Now, section 11 has been clarified to you. We dealt with the rule of res judicata and also constructive res judicata, isn't it? How the when a decree is passed by a particular court in a previous suit, uh, second suit would not lie on the same cause of action, though the court may be competent. Second suit is barred. So I have given you the ingredients. I did not want to much waste our time in this regard. Now let us come to section 12. What does it deal with? Section 12 of the, that is a bar to further suits. Please open the Bail Act and see that can you bar to further suit. Where the plaintiff is precluded by rules from instituting further suit in respect of a particular cause of action, he shall not be entitled to institute a suit in respect of such causes of action in any court to which this code applies. Now, while discussing the CPC, the salient features from the very beginning, I took you through the various provisions such as Order 2, Rule 2, Order 23, then Section 47. Now, let us see the example. Let us see the various example under the Code of Civil Procedure where the second suit is barred. Now, please open to first Section 21A. Section 21A खोलिए आप. Now, under Section 21A, yeah, you cannot file a second suit for challenging a decree on the ground that the decree has been passed by an incompetent court. Okay? See, the language used in Section 21A is more or less akin to Order Section 11. It says that here, no suit shall lie challenging the validity of a decree passed in a former suit between the same parties or between the parties under whom or any of them claim litigating under the same title on the ground based on objection to place of suing. This is territorial jurisdiction. This territorial jurisdiction objection must be taken at the very outset in the written statement before the framing of the issues. And if you take it subsequently, you deemed to have waived. So you are not permitted to raise this objection with regard to challenging a decree because Section 47(1) clearly provides all objection to the decree must be filed by an application, which we have learned later on. So this is one objection which you must bear in mind. Now the second one is, please come to Section 47(1)(a). Now in which cases you can challenge the decree is provided under Section 47. Okay? Questions to be determined by the court executing the decree. All questions arising between the parties to the suit in which decree was passed or represented relating to the suit discharged, so and so, shall be determined by the court executing decree and not by a separate suit. Now, separate suit is barred. Now, this you can say that these are principles analogous to res judicata. They are not exactly res judicata. The principle analogous to the doctrine introduced under the provisions of 21A, Section 47 is a principle analogous to doctrine of res judicata. Now, the third example which can be seen is under the provisions of, kindly see, Section 95(2). Now, Section 95 comes into play when a party has approached the court for after filing of the suit for passing interlocutory order under Section 94 supplemental proceeding, namely order of injunction, order appointing a receiver, ABJ attachment before judgment, arresting the defendant. Now the court has power to pass these orders. Now, if any of these powers have been wrongly exercised according to the defendant, he can apply for compensation under Section 95. When compensation is ordered in this suit, in this matter here, now kindly see that here, subsection 2 of 95 says, An order determining any such application shall bar any suit for compensation in respect of arrest and detention. So you cannot file a new suit with regard to the same question. Everything should be agitated by way of application. So this is another example under the provisions of section 12 of the Act. Now please come to section 1442, 142, 144 while dealing with restitution. 144. Now 144 is a application for restitution. This can be invoked in what circumstances I had explained to you earlier, and again I will repeat it here. Now, when a suit is filed by the defendant against by the plaintiff against the defendant does not defend the same for A reason, B reason, C reason. An ex parte decree has come to be passed under Order 9. Then, in the execution taken out by the plaintiff, the defendant has been dispossessed. Okay? Execution taken out under Order 21, read with Section 51 CPC. Now, it is that time the defendant wakes up from his slumber. Oh, I have been dispossessed wrongfully. I was not aware of the presentation of a suit. I was not in India. I was not served with the writ of summons. So he takes out an application under Order 9, Rule 13 for setting aside the ex parte decree. Okay? So for setting aside the ex parte decree, a sufficient cause must be shown by the defendant as to what prevented him from approaching the court of law in time. That application can be made. Normally, such applications, the court of law, if satisfied that there was a sufficient cause, namely the defendant was ailing, out of station, someone was not correctly served, and the plaintiff has played a fraud, obtained a fraudulent decree by suppression of material fact. So the decree will be set aside. Then the moment decree is set aside, that is not an effective relief. You have been dispossessed. The moment your decree is set aside, you also take out an application, or in the same application, a prayer that your possession must be restored. That is called restituted. You must be put back into possession. So the court passes an order of restitution in the same. Now, when the order of restitution is passed, now please come to subclause 2 of section 144. It says that no suit shall be instituted for the purpose of obtaining any restitution or relief which could have been obtained by the applicant under subsection 1. So when you made the application under Order Rule 13, your second relief is for restitution. You should not give it up. Please note that as a young lawyer, you are appearing for defendant. The defendant says that there is an ex parte decree against me. I have been dispossessed. You please help me. Just don't make an application for setting aside and keep quiet. And your relief prayer A will be that this honorable court be pleased to set aside the ex parte decree. If there's a delay, that this honorable court be pleased to condone the delay. That application under section 5 of the Limitation Act. In the same application, you have to make the prayer that this honorable court be pleased to condone the delay, that this honorable court be pleased to set aside the ex parte decree, and prayer C, that this honorable court be pleased to restore the possession of the defendant after setting aside the decree. And another important order you must seek, pending the hearing and final disposal of the application, the plaintiff be restrained from creating third-party interest, selling the property or any portion thereof to outsiders. Otherwise, your application will become infructuous, or there may be multiplicity of proceeding. You may be required to join the new subsequent purchaser. And by way of abundant caution, also make a prayer for appointment of a court receiver if the court is inclined to grant under Order 40 Rule 1 CPC. That pending the hearing and final disposal of the application, that this honorable court be pleased to appoint a court receiver either under Order 40 Rule 1 CPC and read with under Section 94 CPC. So your application contains comprehensive reliefs. You're asking for everything here. So you're not omitting anything, because If you omit the relief of restitution in this application, subsection 2 of 144 bars you from presenting a new suit. Please note that. This is called the doctrine of the principle analogous to res judicata. Okay, you must bear in mind here, this will straight away come under section 12 of the Code of Civil Procedure. Now the next provision, order 2 rule 2. Please kindly Mansi open order 2 rule 2. Now, while dealing with the frame of the suit, we mentioned that here the plaint must include the whole of the claim. Now, if you are entitled to evict a trespasser from your premises, you are entitled to decree for possession. You are entitled to decree for mean profits. Don't relinquish the prayer for mean profit in this prayer. If you relinquish it, you will not be entitled to claim it. You can only relinquish it with the leave of the court. If you obtain the leave, suppose in a suit for specific performance, you are entitled to both damages as well as for possession or specific performance. If you say that only I booked a flat from a builder in the city of Mumbai, he is selling it to somebody else, please grant injunction. The builder says that here the contract has been terminated. In this scenario, you cannot file a suit only for simplicity injunction, restraining him not to sell to third party interest. Your suit will be for specific performance. That this honorable court be pleased to direct the defendant to specifically perform the contract. And also declaration must contain that this honorable court be pleased to declare that the agreement of sale is valid and subsisting and binding on parties. If you relinquish this claim, then your suit will be barred under order 2 rule 2. So this is straight away applicable under section 12. Please note that here. You have no right to relinquish it. If you have a right to relinquish, when there are certain circumstances you can relinquish, where for example, in a suit for defamation, and you are not in a position to, you are entitled to both damages as well as injunction. But you may take up the plea that here I am unable to ascertain the damages, or I am at the moment unable to arrange for the court fees of 3 lakhs payable in the city of Mumbai. So I am therefore filing the suit only for an order of injunction, which is where the court fees is normally 1,000 rupees under section 64J of the Bombay Court Fees Act. Such a suit is filed in the city civil court because the valuation is less than 1 crore. So in that suit, you make a prayer, the plaintiff is also entitled to damages apart from injunction. But as regard damages are concerned, at the moment the plaintiff is not in a position to pay court fees, hence will not be pursuing that remedy, but seek liberty, leave of the court to sue for damages subsequently. Hence, plaintiff pray for leave under order 2 rule 2 to sue on the same cause of action, in the same cause of action for damages subsequently. Please reserve it. This is how it is done. The clients will not know this. Only as a lawyer, you have to know this remedy. That is one thing. Then section 10, what other suits are remedy? Now please come to order 9, rule 9, order 9, rule 9 CPC. Now order 9, rule 9 deals with the appearance of the parties and consequences of non-appearance. Now here, under order 9, rule 9, we learned that here, the plaintiff after filing of the suit doesn't appear. The defendant has filed written statement, appears. When the matter is called out for hearing, then the court has a right to dismiss the suit. When a suit is dismissed for non-appearance, what is the remedy of the plaintiff here under order 9 rule 2? Here you can only take out application for restoration, giving the reason, but a second suit is barred here. Now kindly see that here, where a suit is wholly or partly dismissed under rule 8, the plaintiff shall be precluded from bringing a fresh suit in respect of the same cause of action. Please note that here. So this bar will come under section 12. Whereas in the earlier case, I mentioned to you, under order 9, rule 4, you may bring a fresh suit or may restore. Because in the case under order 9, rule 4, writ of summons were not served upon the defendant. So hence you are given the liberty to either file a fresh suit or take out application. But in the case of order 9, rule 8, where appearance of the plaintiff is not there, here the writ of summons have been duly served. The court assumes that the defendant has filed written statement. He appears and the defendant is absent. In such a scenario, the court dismisses the suit for the non-appearance of the plaintiff and the plaintiff is barred. So please note that, because this is on the principles of analogous to res judicata. You will not be permitted to file a fresh suit. You can only file an application for restoration. Now come to order 11, order 11, rule 21. Yeah. Now under order 11, we mention order 11 comes into play when written statement is filed before the framing of the issues, the pre-trial stage. Both the parties apply for inspection and discovery of interrogation. When one of the parties has not given inspection, the plaintiff or defendant can take out application under order 11, rule 15 CPC for inspection, and the court passes an order under order 18, directing the parties to give each other inspection. When this order is non-complied, the non-compliance is dealt under order 11, rule 21. Kindly see that. 21 says that here, non-compliance with the order of discovery, where any party fails to comply with the order to answer the interrogatories or discovery of the inspection, he shall, if the plaintiff is liable to have its suit dismissed for want of prosecution and the defendant is struck off. So whereas serious consequences flow if the order directing inspection or discovery is non-complied with. Be careful. Now subsection 2 of order 1121 says that here, where an order is made under subrule 1 dismissing the suit, the plaintiff shall be precluded from bringing a fresh suit on the same cause of action. Got it? Very serious consequences. Please note that here. You are not permitted to bring the suit again, and the plaintiff defendant will be struck off. He will not be allowed to file written statement, or he may not be allowed to lead his evidence. At the most, he will be permitted to cross-examine the plaintiff witnesses in the matter, which please note that here. So as a young lawyer in the practice, when you come, you should be alert here. In the examination, they may ask you, what are the various examples of suits which are barred under section 12? These are the example. Now the next example, order 22, rule 9.
Sir,
order 22. Ji, boliye.
So in this rule, if defendants, his right to file written statement has been struck down, but does that mean that he cannot also cross-examine, or he can cross-examine to a limited extent?
He can cross-examine the plaintiff witnesses, but he will not be allowed to lead his own evidence because there is no written statement, and he has an order with regard, an order has been passed by the court. Your defenses are struck off, mean you cannot lead evidence.
Thank you, sir.
Your written statement cannot be read in evidence unless you get this order set aside. This is an appealable order, which you can, it's a very serious order. If no appeal, or you may file a revision under 115 CPC in the High Court, because this is more or less a final order. A final order completing, what you call it, passing an order, passing a final order where the suit is disposed of is appealable, or as appealable or no appeal lies, a revision lies under 115. Now you please come to next section, order 22, rule 9.
So 7
Order
minutes
to,
are left for this meeting, first half to finish.
yeah. Yeah, anybody wants to ask any questions so far, take up before I proceed with the order 22, the concept I'll explain. Anybody has any question?
So Ashish, in this last example which Mansi just asked is, so if you are not allowed to present evidence, that means the trial is as good as lost. Is that correct, sir?
Yes,
Unless it,
because your trial is lost, you're likely to lose the case mostly. Of course, if the plaintiff is unable to substantiate his case, the court may also dismiss the suit. Court is not bound to decree the suit in plaintiff favor. But the plaintiff stands on a better footing, on a better wicket, because his plaint is there, he has a right to lead evidence, and you have no right to cross-examine. You have right to cross-examine, but you have no right to lead your own evidence. And your written statement will not be read in evidence. That means you have no defense. You can only defend the suit on the weakness of the plaintiff case. You understand?
got it. Yes, sir. Thank
That
you.
is how. But it is a very weak case, but it is better to always contest the suit by filing written statement, repudiating the stand and denying the contention of the plaintiff, and also seeking liberty of the court to lead your own evidence. That is under the provisions of the Indian Evidence Act. You lead your own witnesses, you cross-examine as well as re-examine. Okay. Anybody has any more question before I proceed next? This is very interesting. See that order section 12 does not tell you what are the various examples, but you have to know as a serious student of law. Sorry. See what are the various examples. Kindly bear in mind and write it down, jot it down, and play this video when you go home again. Take a pen and pencil, notebook, and write it down and see the whereat. What I am pointing out are the sections which are straight away attracted. Section 12 doesn't tell you exactly what are the suits which are barred. That is the principle analogous to res judicata. So these are the various examples you have to call out. Okay, next, anybody has any doubt? Any question?
So once you tell all the types of suits, after that, I mean, can you just quickly again tell which all orders and rule numbers? Because I think students will be in a better position to write it down.
Now the other provisions where just take down, I'll explain to you before we open. The other orders are Order 22, Rule 9. I will explain this to you. Then uske baad Order 23, Rule 1, withdrawal of suit. Okay, withdrawal of suit. Then also see the provisions of Order 23, Rule 3A. I will discuss these two. These two are to be discussed here before proceeding further in the matter. Now, please come to Order 22. Now, when is Order 22 is invoked? Now, Order 22 deals with death, marriage, insolvency of the parties. Now, during the pendency of a suit, when plaintiff or defendant dies, if the defendant dies, the plaintiff has to make an application to bring the heirs and legal representatives of the defendant within 90 days. This 90 days, you get it under Article 120 of the Limitation Act. Mansi, please open Article 120.
So Ashish, a quick question, sir.
Yes, Ashish, bataiye.
Do you get this 90 days even if the matter has not come up on board, or do you get this 90 days only if the matter has come up on board?
No. 90 days from the date of death. It has nothing to do with matter. Matter must be pending. Whether the matter come up or not, whether date is given or not, you must make the application within 90 days. See that under the Code of Civil Procedure, to have the legal representatives of the deceased plaintiff or appellant or the deceased defendant made a party 90 days the date of the death of the plaintiff, appellant, defendant, respondent, as the case may be. Okay, this is very important provision. Please note that here. And if you don't bring, now actually, sometime you may not be knowing whether the defendant dead or not, because the defendant may be residing in America, London. Now, what is the, who should inform the court? How do you may say that I do not have knowledge, he did not come. Then it is the intimation is required to be given by the advocate of the party who did. That is the Order 22 Rule 10A. Order 22 Rule 10A check कीजिए आप. I will just briefly go through this. Duty of pleader to communicate to the court death of a party. Whenever a pleader appearing for a party to the suit comes to know of the death of a party, he shall inform the court about it, and the court shall thereupon give notice of the death to the other party, and for this purpose, to contact between the pleader and the deceased and the party shall be deemed to be. So your 90 days will come into play from the date of the knowledge. I mean, when the intimation is given by the other side in the court. Suppose you are appearing for defendant in the matter, you have to inform the court, my lord, I'm appearing for the defendant. I just got the information today from the son of the defendant that the defendant died in USA maybe about 6 months ago, but the intimation has come to me right now. So from the date of the intimation, the court will record this submission of the advocate, and it said that the defendant is reported dead. Then the plaintiff to take steps. What are the steps you take? The steps in application to bring, then it is not only an intimation with regard to the death to be given, and he should also give who are the legal heirs. In case the defendant has not given the advocate, then as a plaintiff's lawyer, you write to the advocate asking him who are the heirs and legal representatives and their addresses. Please furnish to me immediately on receipt of this letter in order to enable me to join them as party defendant for obtaining effective and complete relief. If application is not made within 90 days, the suit automatically abates. Kya? Abates. Abatement as good as dismiss. Abatement doesn't wait for anybody. Even if intimation is not given to the court, abatement continues. Now, when the plaintiff dies, if the heirs don't come on record, the suit stands abated. It applies to both the parties. Now, when the suit is complete, yes.
For both parties, it is 90 days, sir. And can there be a condonation of of the delay?
Yes, you are right. Section 5 of the Limitation Act applies for condonation of delay. Please, Mansi, open Section 5 of the Limitation Act. Extension of prescribed period for certain cases. Any appeal or application other than application under the provisions of 21 may be admitted after prescribed period if the appellant or applicant satisfies the court that he had sufficient cause for not preferring the appeal or making application within such period. So Section 5 applies to applications and appeals and not to suits. Kindly note that. They have not used the word suit. When a suit is automatically barred by limitation, you cannot invoke Section 5, you condone delay. Now, those sections I have read out to you earlier in the Limitation Act, when a suit is barred by limitation from the inception, there may be grounds here when extension can be granted. That is Section 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6 se lekar Section 22 tak hai, isn't it? When exclusion can be taken out. Section 6, 7 deal with disability. Okay? Then that disability must be mentioned in the plain. There is no need for separate application. But if you take out the application, it's okay, no problem. Even if you don't take it out, if you explain in the plain that on account of the disability, namely the plaintiff was a minor at the time of the filing of the suit and could not file it, or minor was suffering from insanity and he could not file it. He was an idiot suffering from so and so. Then similarly, if a ground of, you may take up the plea of fraud has been discovered. You may take up the plea that here, I was in America prosecuting studies. The defendant, my friend to whom I have entrusted the property, he forged my signature and made documents way back in the year 1990, and I was still there. So for challenging the document, it is 3 years. Now you are coming to India after 5 years. You may take up the plea that the fraud has been discovered recently. So the delay will be cut down. So section 5, yes.
So just one doubt, sir. Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, sir. In case these once the death of a party happens and the legal heirs are joined in, either as the plaintiffs or the defendants, then if the suit is decreed against that particular party, the legal heirs will be fully liable in their personal capacity as well, or only to the extent of the bequeath from the deceased plaintiff or defendant.
Very good question. That is only to the extent of the property which they receive. That provision is there in the CPC that I will point out to you, that you may please open section 52, if I am not mistaken. There is a specific provision for that. To what extent you are liable to pay. Section 51 power have enforcement of the decree against, see section 52. Suppose you are one of the heir, you are receiving 1/3, 25% of the property, only 25% can be liable to attach. Okay, liability of a ancestral property, section 53. A partition cases is 54. If you are entitled to 25% of the property, the plaintiff cannot say that you pay 100%. Isn't it? Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And sir,
yes.
Just as a small offshoot, suppose a father has 2 sons, and he has given one property to each son, but the property given to son A is under dispute, and which gets decreed against that person, and he has to, there is an amount due, he becomes a judgment debtor. So can this A son also ask for the joining of B son, saying that he got a property which was unencumbered and he should also be made to pay the part of this thing?
In the execution proceeding, property which is free from encumbrances will be attached and sold. Suppose if the property is encumbered, probably, for example, it is your father had taken a loan from the bank, or your brother had taken a loan from a bank, will have a lien first, and they will have a first charge, and not the decree holder. Decree holder may not be having a charge. So the bank will have a first preference, their claim will be satisfied, the remaining property in execution can be distributed. That is how it is. The property must be free for,
So this applies to self-acquired as well as ancestral property, or only ancestral property?
Thank you.
Ancestral, if you see, self-acquired property, everything can be attached and sold. Okay. And in the case of ancestral property, if your father was the person who he was a judgment debtor, and if there are 5 sons again who have been brought on record, and a widow, everybody having 1/6 share, and the shares can be attached. And the son who is in possession of more property, is my self-acquired property, cannot be attached. If a decree is passed against father, only father's property can be attached, but not the self-acquired property.
No, okay. Self-acquired property of father which is subsequently given to son. That
yes, given to son, yes. But the doctrine of pious obligation will not apply here in civil cases, which is applicable in Hindu law, isn't it?
Yes.
For the purpose of civil cases, it is the property of the ancestor if a decree is against the ancestor. If the decree is against your personal property, if you had taken money in your personal capacity from the plaintiff, your property can be attached. Your property, both self-acquired, can be attached, as well as the property which you have acquired by way of ancestral property or interest succession can be attached to the extent of your share, pursuant to section 53 and 54 of the 51, 52 and 53 of the Act. Okay. Now we were discussing the provisions of, now we have time or we have to
so we can finish this meeting and then re-log in.
Yeah.
So after this one short doubt, sir. Hello.
Yes, Puchiye.
So yes. Now, in case of this such an attachment, it doesn't matter if the probate has been granted, right? If the ancestor becomes the judgment debtor, and the property has already the probate has been passed, that will not be a bar to attachment of such a property, right?
Grant of probate is not a title. It is only for the validity of a will, that the signature is correct or not. Probate proceedings do not determine the right title interest. Please note that. Okay.
Okay,
probate proceeding do not determine the right title interest. Uske liye you have to file a separate suit. Now there's a Bombay High Court judgment. In probate proceeding, you cannot even ask for injunction receiver. You must file a separate suit for title. That is how the judgment of Justice Deshmukh judgment, and which has been confirmed by the bench of Justice Dhananjay Tandrachud, which has taken the plea that here probate proceedings are not suits for title, which is rightly so, in my opinion. Any other question?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So I'll end this meeting for everyone.
Yes.
And we'll re-log in on the same link.
Yes, we re-log it. Okay, thank you.